There is no end to the hell that the Biden administration, or should we call it the Harris administration, because I think we are very, very close to Joe Biden not being much involved at all anymore, if he even is, besides signing executive orders, because, I mean, the guy's out to lunch, just out to lunch. But one of the things that is looming as a threat is something called the PRO Act. And the PRO Act would do a whole bunch of really awful things. First thing it would do, it'd probably light a stick of dynamite under the very concept of independent contracting. It would obliterate state right to work protections and a whole bunch of other awful things. Our friend Mark Mix, who's the president of the National Right to Work Foundation, is on the phone to talk about this. The Democrats say, they're going to try to get it through in the Senate somehow. I don't know if that's going to be an attempt to blow up the filibuster or what. And Biden says he'll sign it, Mark. And this pretty much gives the keys to the labor kingdom, 100% of them, to big labor and forced unionism.
Well, indeed, Vicki, and as your bumper music said, you ain't seen nothing yet. And I'll tell you, this PRO Act has got everything that organized labor officials have demanded and begged for over the last 50 years, including, as you mentioned, the repeal of all 27 right-to-work laws across the country. And then add a little card check in it, add a little AB 5, which is that no independent contractors anymore, no freelancers, no gig workers. Add some civil penalties for small businesses up to $100,000. Add secondary boycotts where the strike at the bakery allows union officials to shut down the sugar factory and the flour factory because they're in a labor dispute. I mean, everything's here, and they're working it hard. And they passed it last night about 8:50 with 225 votes, and it's on its way to the Senate now.
So think about the idea that a strike at an, let's just say, what do we call that, an affiliated facility or a dependent facility it causes the entire chain to shut down because the unions will be able to declare a labor action.
Yeah, that's right. It's called a secondary boycott, and under current statute, that is illegal. You can't target one of your customers or one of your suppliers to shut you down if you happen to be on strike. So what happens under this law, if it passes, or this bill, if it passes, is that unions can target the gasoline company, so they can't deliver gasoline to your facility. That's what this is about. It's there. It's in the bill.
It basically gives big labor control of all employment in the United States. It's really awful, but let's put it up against some of the Supreme Court victories that people like you in National Right to Work have actually fought and won. So if you look at the protections, it seems in the law, it seems to me that we have got protections in the law from a lot of what is now being codified. Does this just erase the Supreme Court decision impact of, say, like the Janus decision or something like that?
No, it doesn't. Actually, the Janus decision covered public sector employees, and the National Labor Relations Act covers private sector employees. So Congress has jurisdiction over private sector labor management relations, but not for lack of trying, Vicki. They've tried to federalize the unionization of police and firefighters across the country. There's a bill that would federally mandate that all states bargain and allow government employees to unionize. But the Janus decision was a First Amendment case that was won by our foundation on behalf of government employees. It said they can't be forced to pay dues or fees to work for their government. Right now, the PRO Act doesn't get there, but it gets everywhere else, that's for sure.
So the logic of the decision would not have any impact in the private sector at all?
Well, that's correct, because the Janus decision deals with government. Government
Sure.
was one of the parties in the case, and there's so-called state action. And so when you have state action, the state must use the most harmless conditions in order to impose their will on people. And the Supreme Court said that there is state action here, therefore there's a constitutional question, and the government can't force you to pay fees to work for your government in the public sector. In the private sector, there's no, quote, state action, even though the federal government controls labor management relations. And if this bill passes, that has nothing to do with about empowering workers and everything to do with empowering union officials. They're trying to sell us there's still no state action,
Exactly.
even though they've taken over labor policy in the country. Yeah.
It would seem to be target rich for lawsuits, but you don't want to get to that point, right? You don't want to say, well, it sure seems like this is state action here. I mean, that would be maybe an argument that National Right to Work would make. But I mean, if this actually happens, who goes to work? I mean, who goes to work? Because you're going to have people wiped out. First off, all the independent contractors and gig workers, forget about Uber, forget about all that stuff that everybody's come to love. That's gone. So your right to work protections are gone. Forced unionism is going to be a thing. You're going to see every small, dinky little franchise sandwich shop unionized because they're going to start claiming that, that the parent company is it needs to be unionized. Therefore, all of the franchisees need to be unionized, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to have micro unions. You're going to have card check. You're going to have union thug actions. I mean, who's going to be left employed at this point?
Yeah.
Except
Vicki,
government workers.
Question. Yeah, that's a great question. And the bottom line is this. I mean, union officials can't sell their product anymore to workers across the country.
It's clear
We're down
they
to about
can't.
6.2% in the private sector. So what have they got to do? They've got to go to government. They got to spend literally millions and millions, if not billions of dollars to elect candidates to office that give them more power. I mean, look at the employees. Look at the pipe fitters and the operating engineers on the Keystone Pipeline. Their union officials here in Washington spent union dues money and general treasury money to support voter registration to get Joe Biden in the White House. The first day he's in the White House, guess what he does? He puts rank-and-file union members on the unemployment line because he withdraws the permit for the Keystone Pipeline. Right to work is all about holding union officials accountable. Those Keystone Pipeline employees, I would hope, would finally send a message to their bosses here in Washington saying, you know what? We're not paying for this anymore. Right to work gives them the ability to do that, and they're trying to wipe that out.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's going to be enough because their bosses are so in bed, politically in bed, that I don't think it much matters what happens to rank and file workers. I mean, you have got union bosses that have traded away, the livelihoods of people by promising them pension benefits that are never going to materialize because there isn't enough money on planet or beyond to pay off the obligations of the union pension. So, I don't really think, I think you union folks out there don't realize that you have never been taken care of by your representation, and now they want to make sure that's for everybody. What else? As I understand, employer rights to resist unionization are also severely curtailed.
That's right. You take away the opportunity for an employer to discuss what the implications of unionization would be with his workforce. They want to create what's so-called, they want to amend the so-called persuader rule that says that when an employer hires a legal counsel or someone to give them advice about union organizing campaigns, all of that has to be disclosed, and it limits dramatically how an employer can speak to employees about unionization. So what you're saying is once the union comes in and starts organizing, the employer has to zip his mouth and say, or her mouth, and say, nothing about what the impact would be on the business.
So you've got the ability of the union to basically shut down the employer's ability to save his or her company and level honestly with the employees. That employer is also supposed to turn over all of the identifying information of the entire workforce so that the unions can personally target you at home and terrorize you by threatening to kill your dog, or something like that. Then we've got these micro unions that are also teed up in this. This is just simply a way, and tell me if I'm wrong, for the union to actually have control of the entire workforce, even if they don't have, the full workforce unionized, because they have exclusive right of representation.
Yeah, that's right. The micro-unit concept came out of the Volkswagen organizing drive when the UAW was shut out down there by the workers in Chattanooga. And it precedes that a little bit, too. Some of, like a shoe department at a department store was unionized because the union couldn't organize all the workers. And the unions have always tried to just find a way to get the camel's nose under the tent, to get into a unit and start spreading the word then from a position inside the workplace. And usually what's happened under previous labor law and under current labor law is that if you're going to organize a facility, you got to organize the whole facility from wall to wall, if you will, as opposed to cherry picking particular, departments. Or, for example, at Volkswagen, it was the paint department. They wanted to organize that. And so unions can't have it both ways. On one hand, they want to, it used to be that they wanted to organize everybody in a workplace because that gave them immediate dues revenue in states that didn't have right to work laws. And now, because they couldn't win those elections, they say, well, look, let us just go in and pick 5 or 6 people and we'll unionize them. And then we'll use that platform and that foothold inside the business to go out and go get everybody else. It's about union privilege, not worker rights. It's about union privilege and not worker rights. And everything you're talking about, Vicki, it gives union officials power. It doesn't do anything for workers.
It does nothing for workers. Does it even, in let's just say, magically, that they're able to get back up to, say, 38% of a union workforce. I don't even think forcibly extracting dues from 38% of a union workforce when now they have to negotiate on behalf of benefits for all of them through collective bargaining, that still doesn't bail out the upside down pensions. It still doesn't save their ass in trading away, in trading for political power, retirement benefits for people who are going to be left holding the bag.
Well, you need to read the so-called COVID relief bill. I mean, because we know that only about 10% is the COVID. But there's something in there about multi-employer pension funds, Vicki, that you're not going to like. It basically says the government's going to pay off the indebtedness of all these critical union pension funds, and there's no obligation to repay it. In fact, they're going to pay benefits all the way out to 2051 for these, because the unions have, to your point, the pensions are underfunded. They're critical. The pensions for the union officials are well funded, well stocked, and everything's good. The pension for the workers is underfunded on critical status. Most of them are at the Department of Labor.
And so once COVID relief bill, what you're saying is going to bail out those multi-state pensions, and that'll wipe them clean so that the union leaders can do the exact same thing all over again if they get the PRO Act.
You ain't seen nothing yet, Vicki.
Mark, I wanted there to be a day when there was no reason for your group to exist any longer. Not that I didn't love you, but, you could retire someday happy, feeling like you conquered the beast forever. But I'm afraid you're going to have to stick around for a while.
Always work to do. Thanks, Vicki, for the opportunity to talk with you and get this out in the public.
Mark Mix, the National Right to Work Foundation. Hey, guys. There's no argument for this. This is just pure corrupt payout for a handful of powerful and privileged people at the expense of everybody else. I'm going to take a quick break.